What is up, everyone? We're live doing this. I feel like not that much later than I normally do, but I don't know. I ate too much and my food just didn't digest, so I really wanted to have more energy for the show. So now that I've recovered, now that I have got over from stuffing myself with sushi, we can have the show. So today I'm going to talk about Ralph Waldo Emerson, and I think this video is shorter. We might get to the second one. Depends how fast it is to go through, but real quick, I want to summarize Emerson. I think that's something I'm going to do. I'm going to summarize the main points I'm going to talk about. Emerson to me is someone that transcends philosophy, transcends normal ideas of what it means to be an intellectual because he touches on the spiritual. Everything you read from Emerson is more like a spiritual experience than it is a philosophical argument. And that's perhaps the most interesting aspect of him. That's perhaps the most inspiring aspect of him is that you not only have an interesting new idea and an interesting new way to approach the world, but you find something out about yourself. You discover something that you have always known but you couldn't quite put your words to. And to me, that's a very beautiful idea. To me, that's something that is very inspiring. But um, I don't think Emerson particularly gets the respect that he deserves, especially today. Like most bookstores you go to will not carry a single book from Emerson. They'll carry something similar. They'll carry Walden by Henry David Thoreau, who Emerson himself inspired, but they will not carry Emerson's essays. And I think this is due to the fact that he is his own person. You can't really summarize his ideas. You can't really summarize his beliefs. You can't in any way package him up like anyone else because he's so unique. And in this lies his greatest weakness, but as also his greatest strength because it doesn't read like philosophy, it reads like spirituality.
Solitude, a connection with nature. These are just a couple things we think of when we think of a transcendentalist, one of 19th century America's philosophers at the time.
I can't remember who said it, but someone said that Emerson was the only great mind to ever come out of America. And he really spurred on the later movements when it comes to American philosophy, American literature, and stepping out on its own, stepping out and creating its own thing. Whereas previously, all American philosophy was heavily influenced by Europe, heavily influenced by the Greeks, whereas Emerson set out to do something new and inspired a lot of people. One of his biggest influences is obviously Henry David Thoreau. That's why it's called Walden. It's because Thoreau is living on Walden Pond that was given to him by Emerson. Um, but also Walt Whitman, who is I think he's a poet, some sort of writer from the Civil War. I need to read him at some point because he, when there's someone, especially a writer, that things are named after, it's probably a good idea to check into them.
One thinks of Henry David Thoreau, or Walt Whitman, a wise sage hidden in the woods, embracing the sights and sounds of a forest. But arguably the most famous transcendentalist is the philosopher and poet Ralph Waldo Emerson. And in
Emerson was like, I would, the closest comparison to Emerson is like Jordan Peterson. So think of how Jordan Peterson's almost like a star. I mean, regardless of what you think about him, it's the same kind of um, mystique. It's the same kind of respect, the same kind of crowds would be drawn to see him speak. And Emerson went from somebody that was like struggling to survive to selling out tours across the country and speaking about his ideas. And it's very interesting to think about this because he was like a rock star, basically. Like he had such level of acclaim, he had such a level of fame. But it's weird to see that it didn't stick. It's weird to see that he's not thought of in the likes of the great philosophers, especially in, the American school system. You don't really learn about Emerson. The only way I've ever heard about Emerson is like through maybe doing a little research on Walden, through maybe doing a little bit of research into other authors who cite him, and that's really how I discovered him. And it's quite a shame because I think in his essays he has a lot of amazing things to say and a lot of inspiring things to say. And honestly, if you're an American, I think it should be required reading because what the American ideal is what Emerson writes. The idea of doing things for yourself, the idea of picking yourself up by your bootstraps, the idea of not needing anyone else because you have the ultimate capacity to change your life. You have the ultimate freedom to do what it is that you want to do. You have the ultimate freedom to be yourself, to speak what you want, to speak your truth, to defend yourself, to do all of these things they're guaranteed under the Constitution. And it's a very weird sentiment that we're not taught these ideas, and it's probably because he was a peace lover. But
1842 in Boston, Massachusetts, Emerson would give a lecture bringing clarity and outlining to us what exactly is a transcendentalist. This is a lecture known as the Transcendentalist. Emerson starts by saying, look, I know this new transcendentalism thing seems to be popping off everywhere in the US, but it's actually quite an old philosophy, just brought into modern times. They are not new, but the very oldest of thoughts cast into the mold of these new times. What are these oldest of thoughts, you might ask? A philosophy known as idealism. Idealism is best understood as it contrasts with another philosophy known as materialism. Now look, materialism is a philosophy, but also just kind of seems like common sense to us. Materialism's basically like, look, you see that duck? That's a duck, and that's it. There's a material world in which we sense.
so this is Plato's idea of forms. It's what he's describing. So think of it, the easiest way to think about it is what you see is what it is, the Aristotelian idea. And Plato believed that there was something beyond. And the best way to describe this is everything you see in front of you is not actually colored. Everything in front of you does not have any sort of color at all. It's merely the frequency that the atoms are vibrating at that gives the appearance of color. So, in fact, Plato was way beyond his time because he was predicting the nature of things that are beyond our comprehension, that the world actually exists beyond our senses, and we can merely approximate it.
Things for what they are, and that's the end of the story. The idealist, on the other hand, says, yeah, I see that duck. However, there's something more going on here. Something beyond just the physical duck. Now, what this secret thing behind the physical duck is varies depending on different idealist philosophies. But the fact of the matter is that the idealist is not content to just say that this object is just this object. There's something more going on. He does not deny the sensuous fact, by no means, but he will not see that alone. He does not deny the presence of this table, this chair, and the walls of this room, but he looks at these things as the reverse side of the tapestry, as the other one, each being a sequel or completion of a spiritual fact, which nearly concerns him. Here's the thing about this duck. You're looking at it during a certain time.
So the explanation he's giving is, I feel, is fairly convoluted. Just think of it as you either believe that things are exactly how they appear, or things are beyond our comprehension. Our tools of observation are only so good that they can only pick up so much. And that's really what he's talking about.
Time, a certain place, with preconceived ideas about what this duck is. All these factors make it so that no two people can look at this duck the exact same way. There's the physical duck, but before it enters our consciousness, it gets mixed up in a blending machine of circumstances, factors.
This is what Robert Anton Wilson calls reality tunnels. I think it's the easiest way to think about it. Everything you've experienced, everything you've seen, everything you've grown up with has in some way biased your opinion and in some way biased how you view things. Whether it's physically, you have poor eyesight, you view something differently. Whether it's culturally, you view it in a different context. Whether it's physically because your point of view, like there's all these different factors that begin to create different comprehensions of the world. And this is what he's talking
And biases. And then when our consciousness comprehends it, it's something unique and special only to us. Okay, let's ditch this duck and use an example that might be more effective. Love. When I say the word love, I'm willing to bet that each of you are having a different reaction to that word upon hearing it. Maybe you're thinking of romantic love, or familial love, or brotherly love, and those unique individuals in your life that fill those spots. Maybe you're thinking of a specific person.
think if we all tried to define love, like what's the definition you would give, it's different than mine. And that's it. It's an individual experience. It's something you can only feel inside yourself. You can be in love with someone and that person can be in love with you, but the feelings are different.
Maybe you're just thinking of the concept of love and what that means to you. Point is, there are an infinite number of ways to consciously comprehend a thing, leading to our own unique and personal interpretations of the world. In sum, the materialist sees things and thinks of them as just those objective things. End of story. The idealist recognizes the role that he or she plays in their own interpretation of.
So I think today we live in a day and age where everyone is materialists. And this is, I'm going to broadly go off of his definition, but I think most see things as if we do this, then it'll do this. If we change this policy, then everything will be fixed. Well, if we just buckle down, then we could have this. And while these sentiments might work, while these sentiments might affect something in a positive direction, I think it's never been easier to point the finger at the other side and say what they're doing is wrong. It's never been easier to point at someone else and say, if they just did this, then everything would be okay. But it's so weird to me that we don't understand that there's like circumstances beyond our control. There's certain aspects of human nature that can never quite be curtailed. And this is why you see every single revolution that ever happens eventually turn into what they're fighting against. You think the Bolshevik Revolution didn't become utter tyrants once they got power? You think they didn't do disgusting things to their own people for the sake of freedom? And it's almost ironic in the sense that like there are these forces that seem to pull us back when we about to make headway. And I mean this is even an idea of Emerson. It's the idea of circles, the idea that everything is changing, the idea that everything is dying and becoming anew, and in some way we're part of a grander scheme of things.
Those things. His thought, that is the universe. His experience inclines him to behold the procession of facts you call the world, as flowing perpetually outward from an invisible, unsounded center in himself, center alike of him and of them, and necessitating him to regard all things as having a subjective or relative existence, relative to that aforesaid unknown center of him. Now from this one point, we can understand the ethical lifestyle of the transcendentalist. Firstly, let's talk about this love of nature that all these guys seem to be on about.
I think people get this idea wrong. When the transcendentalists talk about love of nature, it's not solely the love of nature, it's your nature. It's what kind of lifestyle would make you eternally happy. And for the transcendentalists, they found that going out and isolating themselves and forcing themselves to live off the bare minimum, forcing themselves to live a life of very modest means was where they found the most meaning. And the truth is, there's probably some universality in this. There's probably a common string that would give people a better life than they have today. But it's also the idea of doing something because it inspires you, doing something because it's fundamental to who you are. And if you think you already live your life in the way that you were meant to, if you think you're living up to your potential, I want you to ask yourself, is there any dreams that you haven't chased? Are there any activities you wish you've done that you haven't done? Are there any things that you are chomping at the bit to start, but you can't start? And if the answer to any of these questions is yes, then you're not living by your nature because you're denying an aspect of yourself. This is what Jungian psychologists call the shadow. It's the repression of the self for the sake of conformity, the repression of the self for the sake of comfort, the repression of the self for the sake of fitting in and being protected by the herd. But as Emerson says, Socrates, Plato, Pythagoras were all misunderstood. To be great is to be misunderstood. To be yourself in a world where conformity is the norm is the greatest of triumphs. And this is what he's talking about. It's not going out and living in the woods. It's not something silly like this. Like don't take the simplistic version of transcendentalism and just say, well, I'm not a kook that's going to go live in the woods. No, listen to the message. The message is following your internal compass. The message is following what it is that you want to be in this world and living your life based off this ideal, living your life in this manner, following what would bring you eternal fulfillment. As Nietzsche said, live every moment as if you're destined to repeat it till the end of existence. And if you do that, you live a happy life.
And here I'm using nature with a lowercase n this time. Think of being out of the city, in the forest or desert or beach, with no man-made interruptions between you and the natural world. Because the transcendentalist is an idealist, he mixes himself into the world, in the sense that he has a personal interpretation of the world. Emerson
So there's like a great reverence for nature, but it's also the calmness of it. It's also the ability to escape. It's also the ability to gain awareness, gain presence. It's almost like a meditative like practice. They go into the woods for the sake of calming down their mind, for the sake of stopping worrying about things that don't matter, for the sake of stopping to chase wealth, stopping chasing all the things that continually put them in worse and worse and worse positions, lose all of their time, lose all of their energy for something that doesn't even bring them fulfillment. And this is really the fundamental truth of life. Anything material in this world will not make you happy. It might make you happy in a fleeting sense. It might make you happy for a few minutes. But I promise you, the very moment you get what it is that you want in this world, you're going to want something more. You're going to want the next achievement. You're going to want the next paycheck. You're going to want the next car that comes out the next year. And all of these things are really just you trying to compensate. You really just trying to make up for a lack of self-worth, for a lack of self-value, for a lack of self-understanding, to say it better. And what I mean by this is every time you go into the world and seek something, what you're really doing is seeking the approval of others so that you approve of yourself. And it's very ironic because in the end, you never get your self-approval because you were chasing what would make other people happy. You were chasing what would please the masses and not what would please you. And that's really the greatest sin. As Dostoevsky said, your greatest sin is you sold your soul for nothing. You betrayed yourself for absolutely nothing. And that's what we all do when we chase the fleeting things of this world. That's what we all do when we chase everything except our own internal happiness. And the transcendentalists really understood happiness because they understood when you calm yourself down, when you remove the stress of your life, then you are just eternally happy. And the way to do this in the modern day world is obviously you can go out in the woods, obviously you can go hiking, obviously you can get away from things. That's a great practice. It's a great way to keep your sanity in such a stressful day and age. But the simplest way to be happy is to be gracious. Gratitude is the start of all happiness. The moment you can be thankful is the moment you can be happy. And yet we want to look to everything we don't have. Not a single person in this world cannot look to something that they don't have. Bezos, Elon, Trump, Obama, I don't care who it is. I don't care who it is. Everyone in this world can point to something that they're lacking, but every person in this world can also point to something that they have. Even if you have nothing, you still have a life. I bet you there's a ton of people that are dead. There's a ton of people that died with regrets that want to be in your position. And it's like to deny ourselves these gifts, to deny ourselves the ability to recognize what we've already been blessed with is truly the biggest obstacle for our happiness.
even had this idea of a person in nature being like a transparent eyeball. And here's a funny little sketch I found of one. In nature, you can get more easily in tune with that because of the lack of others forcing their interpretations upon you. If you're alone in the woods, it's easier to feel more deeply interactive with a giant lake than if you were in the city and you see a poster telling you to buy the McDonald's.
So think about it like this. If you have a million things, you can't appreciate them because your attention is spread so thin. Whereas if you have one tool for the job that you need to survive, then you appreciate that tool because it allows you to keep living.
Minecraft meal. Human intervention is at play to interrupt your personal experiences. Now, this kind of plays into the next part of how a transcendentalist acts, and that's a drive to solitude. You don't just escape society to be antisocial. You're doing it to drive out the noise, so that you could have a more personal, individual relationship to the world. It is simpler to be self-dependent. The height, the deity of man, is to be self-sustained, to need no gift, no foreign force. Society is good when it does not violate me, but best when it likes to solitude. The last ethical aspect of the transcendentalist I want to mention is a trust in one's own intuitive moral judgments. Emerson uses the example of the societal moral of do not lie.
So Emerson is very similar to Nietzsche in this idea that there is a fakeness to morality. there's a fakeness to posturing. There's a fakeness to what we consider good. And it's all hidden behind insecurity. It's all hidden behind the herd mentality. And when you're yourself, when you disagree because you vehemently believe it, that is the greatest thing you can do in this world. The greatest thing you can do in this world is weather the storm in spite of the crowd, weather the storm in spite of the masses because you believe something.
He uses the play Othello as an example, but because I haven't read it in a while and Julius Caesar is a much better play by Shakespeare, let's use the famous axe murder example instead. You're hiding someone innocent in your house. An axe murderer shows up and asks you where they are. Yeah, you've heard this before. Society, to Emerson, tells you to tell the truth, but the transcendentalist might break the societal rule and lie. In action, he easily incurs the charge of antinomianism by his avowal that he who has the lawgiver may with safety not only neglect,
There is a Roman proverb, there is no rule without an exception. And when you understand that, you understand that these hardline moral judgments we make are not infallible. There's always some wiggle room. There's always some explanation for why we would do something, why we would do this. And to conform to rigidity is to stop thinking. And if you stop thinking, you might as well be dead. That was Robert Anton Wilson. I love that quote.
but even contravene every written commandment. Now, it should be mentioned that transcendentalism is a rich and vast philosophy, and this lecture is kind of only like an intro to transcendentalism, so I'd recommend checking out my other videos on Emerson to get a fuller picture. But hopefully, this video is a good general overview of who a transcendentalist.
I thought that was pretty good. It talked about, I think it focused on the idea of forms way too much. That's not really something that I feel is present. What I feel much more present is the idea of self, the idea of pursuing what it means to be yourself, understanding that living a life based off of other people's judgments, living a life based off of other people's moral compasses will bring you nothing except shame, guilt, pain, and overall just a bad experience. The only way to ensure that you live a life that means anything is to live it by your own code. And I'll explain the quote I said earlier. To be great is to be misunderstood. And what Emerson's saying is to be great doesn't mean anything grand. It doesn't mean that you change the world. It means that you lived up to who you should be. You became exactly who it was that you wanted to be, and you lived that way day after day after day. Because the history book will record lives of countless people that did great things, but in the end, they still lived with regrets. In the end, they still weren't eternally happy. In the end, they sacrificed their sanity, they sacrificed their life for the sake of some policy, for the sake of some war that would eventually just be forgotten, that would eventually just fade. Whereas the mystic, whereas the transcendentalist, whereas the monk or the sage lived a life of bliss because they found out what it was they wanted to do. They found out the things that gave them happiness. They found out the things that provided them with the ability to appreciate day after day after day after day. And this is very much the idea of Camus. Like, in the end, everything you do will fade to dust. In the end, in the grand scheme of things, we're a speck of dust in the history of the world. Who knows how old the universe is? We're even more insignificant. And whatever lies beyond the universe is also bigger. So, do we think that what we do is that important? Do we think what we do hinges the entire fate of the universe? Or is what we do in the grand scheme of things so minor that it makes no sense for us to spend any time in pain? It makes no sense for us to ever conform to what other people want us to do. It makes no sense to live a life of fear because whatever accomplishment we garner, whatever success we have, means nothing in the end. The only thing that means anything is the experience. The only thing that means anything is the love you feel, the happiness you feel, the joy you embrace day after day after day. And that's really what transcendentalism is about. I think this was a fairly good video, but I think the definition I just gave was a little better.
As a kid, my favorite comic strip was Calvin and Hobbes. For those of you not in the know, the strip centered around a boy named Calvin and his stuffed tiger slash imaginary friend named Hobbes. Now there were a couple story arcs in this series involving the family going out camping into the woods, and Calvin hated it. There was no TV and things were just boring to him. I remember feeling a similar way about camping in the outdoors when I was a kid. I mean, I was raised by technology. Let me know if you could relate. But you know, as I grew older, I began to see a lot of value in nature. I've been on many hikes, I enjoy fishing.
There's just something about going out into nature and returning to your roots that calms everything down. Because it's hard to be stressed about the world when you can go see the beauty of creation, when you can go see the beauty of this world, and you see that whatever problem that you're dealing with is completely meaningless in the grand scheme of things, completely meaningless in the grand scheme of your entire life. Most of the problems that we deal with on a daily basis, we will not even remember in 10 years, yet we allow it to ruin our lives today. And I think that's one of the saddest ideas. I think that's something that we should start to embrace. We should start to embrace that most of our problems aren't problems. Most of our problems is our minds need to be working. Our minds need to be active. Our minds need to solve everything in this world because that's what it was taught to do since the young age of, what is it, 5 when we go to school? And that's really the saddest aspect of this world, that we come into this world and we are curious, we are excited, we are imaginative, we are playful, we are creative, and it is beaten out of us day after day after day after day.
And my girlfriend's been wanting to catch the sunset up on a crest, so I'm adding that to the to-do list. Now, what if there's a philosophy out there that gives nature the respect it deserves? A philosophy that not only emphasizes nature, but also notes the important relationship between nature and the individual. Well, today we're going to be looking at the famous essay Nature by Ralph Waldo Emerson, and we'll see if we can find that nature-loving philosophy.
So think of Emerson's nature, just think of it as the Tao. And if you don't know what Taoism, I'll give you a brief definition. Tao is the idea that there's a force beyond knowing, that there's something, some idea, some grand plan of things that makes things act according to its will. And this is what's called the Tao. It's very similar to a monad. It's very similar to an all-knowing God. It's very similar to pantheist views, but it's non-archetypal. It doesn't have an image. There's nothing. It's just pure essence, pure flow, pure life. It's very similar to what Spinoza said. And basically, Lao Tzu, the writer of the Tao Te Ching, said, the Tao that can be written is not the real Tao, meaning that whatever we can understand is beyond our comprehension. And what this means is things will follow a predetermined path. Things will follow a certain order of things. Things will happen for a reason, and we merely must just listen to the signs. We must live in accordance with our own nature. We must live with accordance to the nature that we were given from a youth. And this is what Emerson's nature is talking about. It's not the woods. It's not the world. That's only a fraction of it. It's also your own divine nature. It's also the own divine nature of the entire essence of everything.
Hello and welcome to Philosophy Tunes, the channel that seems to do a lot of American philosophy for some reason. I don't know, it just turned out that way, I guess. But I do mention that because Emerson is a bit of a free-spirited trailblazer here. I mean, we're all familiar with philosophy that's come out of Europe and Asia, but when Emerson was writing in 1837, this was just 61 years after America declared independence, so there wasn't much American philosophy really sprouting up. We were still vibing with philosophical traditions coming out of Europe. I mean, hell, John Locke might as well have written our founding.
Nietzsche was heavily influenced by Emerson as well. You can see a lot of the carryovers, and honestly, it helps with most of my understanding of Nietzsche.
documents. But Emerson, the independent individualist, is out here trying to be original and not just follow in the footsteps of the past. This is what he says in the Introduction to Nature. Why should we grope among the dry bones of the past, or put the living generation into masquerade out of its faded wardrobe? The sun shines today also. There is more wool and flax in the fields. There are new lands, new men, new thoughts. Let us demand our own works and laws and worship.
Okay. What he's saying here is very powerful. What he's saying is the idea that past is the past. We can linger on the past, but all we can do is at best recreate it. And at that, it's merely a carbon copy. It will always be looked at as just a copycat. It won't be looked at as something original. It won't be something that progresses us to the next stage of evolution, progresses us to the next stage of humanity, a more peaceful, a more harmonic, a better life for everyone. And there's an interesting idea. I think it's the 48 laws of power. Yeah, it is. There's a law. It's like avoid stepping into the shoes of a great man. There have been figures that have shaped history and they have done things a certain way. In order for us to improve things, we must not look to the past, but we must look to the future. We must adapt our ways. We must change them. We must take the lessons from the past and interpolate them with the new. It's a very, very inspiring idea, and it's very similar to what you see in Nietzsche's idea of the Übermensch, the idea of the Superman, or self-overcoming, living the ideal, imagining yourself to be a certain way and taking the steps to be that way. That's the idea.
Sounds very Nietzschean. Speaking of which, check out my friend The Living Philosophy's video on Emerson
This is a very good video. If you've never watched it, I'll react to it at some point on stream.
and Nietzsche. Good stuff. Anyways, with this pioneer mentality in mind, let's head right into the essay. And what better place to start than to define what nature even is? Emerson is going to recognize both the philosophical definition of nature and the common sense definition of nature. He's going to use the word nature in both senses throughout the essay. Philosophically considered, the universe is comprised of nature and the soul. Strictly speaking, therefore, all that is separate from us, all which philosophy distinguishes as the not me, that is both nature and art. All other men and my own body must be ranked under this name, nature.
So everything that comprises you also comprises everyone else. Every atom that is you, else, it'll soon be something else. And recognition of this is our recognition of our connectivity to everyone. And Schopenhauer had a very interesting idea. This is one of my favorite ideas by him. Empathy derives from the statement that this art thou, meaning that you are everything. There is a piece of you in everything. And when you could start seeing yourself in everything, then you could start acting with compassion. You could start understanding that if I was in this person's shoes, if I saw things that they saw, if I experienced everything they experienced, I'd probably be the same way. And to me, this is one of the greatest ways to move forward because it's very similar to the Christian ideal of let he who hath no sin cast the first stone. How dare you judge others before you judge yourself? And when you start turning the mirror on yourself, you start saying like, you know what? I do have imperfections. I do have things that are wrong with me. So like, why shouldn't I give the other people this benefit of the doubt? And I think this is where the modern day and age needs to start looking to the past for some answers, start embracing this idea because the more this idea is embraced, the more we can move forward together. I mean, the secret to making the world a better place is bringing people together. It's not fracturing them. It's not going off into these different ideologies. It's understanding the necessity of both the left and the right. If you don't have the left, then the right turns into fascism. If you don't have the right, then the left turns into communism. That's just how politics work. Think if a country makes a new law every single day, eventually they're going to become authoritarian. Eventually the power is going to go unchecked. Eventually someone is going to go in there and start taking advantage of the positions in power and start destroying the structure that keeps the parity. And it's very ironic that most people don't even understand this, and most people are vehemently opposed to absolutely every single individual that doesn't vote for the same person they vote for. It's so weird. So weird.
Nature. Nature, in common sense, refers to essences unchanged by man: space, the air, the river, the leaf. Now, you may look at these definitions and strongly separate an individual from nature, as if they were two totally separate things. However, it's a little more complicated than that. There is a certain connection that can be felt in nature when someone can almost become one with nature. At least that's what it sounded like from this quote. Standing on the bare ground, my head bathed by the blithe air and uplifted into infinite space, all mean egotism vanishes. I become a transparent eyeball. I am nothing. I see all. The currents of the universal being circulate through me. I am part or parcel of God. Take
We'll go back to this. I am nothing. I see all. The current of the universal being circulates through me. I'm a part or part. So Emerson was heavily influenced by the Bhagavad Gita, which I actually have not read, but it's Eastern philosophy, so I understand it fairly well. And basically, he's talking about chakras here. He's talking about meditation. He's talking about transcending the self. That's really the deeper lining behind it. But what all this means is basically Emerson is saying that there's a part of you that is locked behind ego. There's a state of consciousness, there's a awareness, there's an intuition. There's something that we only gain access to when we allow ourselves to become part of the world. We drop all judgments, we drop all assumptions, we drop everything that makes us us, and we stop trying to control things. And what this is simply is just meditation. It's the calming down of the mind to listen to the voices around us. It's the calming down of all of these things that allow us to see the thing that's always been right under our nose.
I see all. The currents of the universal being circulate through me. I am part or parcel of God. Take note of Emerson saying that he becomes a transparent eyeball. That's a key point here. There's actually a funny little drawing of a transparent eyeball here, so
Yeah, I
yeah,
agree.
enjoy
Count
that.
Spatula,
Let's break down
that's
what it actually means, though, to be
dude,
transparent.
it's so weird to me how like I don't know. I don't know if you see this as well, but like ever since the election, like I see a real shift in the way that certain policies are being talked about, certain news is being covered, and you almost see like a change. You almost see it now that the Republicans are in power that they're going to start trying to regulate speech again. That's what I'm seeing. I'm seeing in the next 10 years, like whatever cancel culture is, it's going to be on the other side. It's like so sad to see, and I don't want to be right about it, but I see it already. I hope I'm wrong. I really do. I hope that things turn out for the better, but I'm just so skeptical of the machine because I don't think any changes were made to the machine. I think it's still the same machine. It just has a new coat of paint.
Transparent eyeball so you can look like that. I'm sure you'll be turning heads and taking numbers when that happens. So transparent. Think about a transparent piece of glass. The glass in a way becomes whatever is behind it. Like if you hold up glass to a red piece of paper, it turns red in your eyes. I think this transparent attribute of the eyeball is about blending into nature and becoming one with it.
It's about seeing everything. It's about recognition of this art thou. It's about recognition of the connection and the tie to the world that we all have.
Losing your egotism, like Emerson says. Now the eyeball part is the absorbing part. Observing and absorbing
He's also talking about his the third eye too, if you're not picking it up.
nature to take it all in. And oh man, there is a lot of nature to
A
take
lot of
in.
these writers, they'll disguise these like more esoteric ideas in symbolism, and it could just be pure symbolism, but it's too on the nose for it to not be.
So that's my interpretation of the transparent eyeball. Let me know what you think below. But now that we have an idea of nature and its relationship to the human individual, let's now look at these 4 uses of nature, for lack of a better word. So, to help guide our discussion, Emerson lists out these four uses here. Whoever considers the final cause of the world will discern a multitude of uses that enter as parts into that result. They all admit of being thrown into one of the following classes: commodity, beauty, language, and discipline. So let's start with commodity because that's the easiest to explain. And it's also the first on the list, so I wouldn't want to weird y'all out by starting with a third or something. Anyways, commodity seems to basically refer to nature's ability to meet our needs. Beasts, fire, water, stones, and corn serve him. The field is at once his floor, his workyard, his playground, his garden, and his bed. All the parts incessantly work into each other's hands for the profit of man. The wind sows the seed. The sun evaporates the seed. The wind blows the vapor to the field.
So this is just the seeming ability of nature to meet what it is that required of it. And it is very interesting to see how everything changes, grows, is destroyed, and is reborn again.
The ice on the other side of the planet condenses rain on this. The rain feeds the plant feeds the animal, and thus the endless circulations of the divine charity nourish man. I feel like this idea is better conveyed in Henry David Thoreau's book Walden, specifically the first chapter. We have a video on it here, so go check it out. But yeah, the section on commodity is not overly long and is pretty comprehensible. Beauty, on the other hand, oh boy. As if beauty wasn't complicated enough in our lives. This is pretty complex. Emerson divides the aspects of beauty up into three ways as it relates to nature. So the obvious first aspect of beauty looks at simply perceiving nature as something beautiful. This one isn't that complicated. We could see beauty in a lot of nature. I mean, every day we get the opportunity to see a sunset and a sunset.
There's a there's a weird recognition. I don't know if I'm the only one that feels this, but you'll go out and do a hike, you'll go out into nature, and it's like whatever. The longer you stay there, the brighter the colors become, the more vibrant the sounds become, the more aware of everything that you are, and the more at home you feel. And it's a very weird phenomena. I think it's something you need to experience to believe, but it's a very powerful tool to calm yourself down and get yourself away from things because I mean I'll give you a real secret here. Like if you want to change who you are, if you want to change what it is about you that you don't like, then all you have to do is begin thinking different thoughts. All you have to do is begin becoming a new person. And how do we become a new person? Because we're full of ideas, we're full of experiences, we're full of all these things. It's through meditation, it's through a hard reset, it's through calming yourself down. It's through going into nature, going away, getting into solitude and finding out what is really important to you. Because unless we can get the proper diagnosis, we can't give the right prescription.
Sunrise. I was in Ethiopia once and we hiked up this massive mountain. Granted, it was pretty physically demanding, but once we got up there was this village near a cliff and oh man, looking off that cliff so high up over the area was beautiful. Emerson's pretty poetic, so he's probably going to convey this idea better than me. I see the spectacle of morning from the hilltop over against my house, from daybreak to sunrise, with emotions which an angel might share. The long, slender bars of cloud float like fishes in the sea of crimson light. Yeah, I also think that quote blew my Ethiopia story out of the water in terms of poetry.
Thing about Emerson is he is a philosopher but a poet first. And that's what all the great philosophers. The great philosophers can break down life through poetry. And that's what you'll find in the works of Nietzsche. That's what you'll find in the works of Joyce or Emerson or Shakespeare. Like these people use words to fill in the gaps. Like whatever you read, the words itself aren't the meaning. It's the feelings that's created. It's the emotions that are evoked that tells you everything you need to know. And this is what's missing from the world today. The world has become so matter of fact. The world has become so this or that. The world has become so egotistical that it cannot even laugh at itself. It cannot even play around because it has to be serious. It has to be so professional. It has to be so corporate. It has to be so censored and controlled. You can't put an idea beyond the reach of people. You can't put something in between the lines because most people will miss it. And it's led to a world where like we're spoon fed. Like, have you ever watched a TV show and instead of like showing the person do something smart, instead of showing the person do something capable, one of the characters says, "You're so smart and capable." That's the idea. Like there's a scene in Game of Thrones where um I think it's Sansa or Sansa. Someone's like, "Sansa, you're the smartest person I've ever met." And it's like she was an idiot the whole show, but the only reason you think that is because she said that. Like she's done nothing to prove that. And instead of just writing the character to do something smart, instead of just writing the character to do something clever or show some character development, they tell you. And this is what we're missing in the world. We're missing this deeper meaning. We're missing this deeper understanding. The thing that only can come in between the lines. The thing that can only come through your own understanding of what it is that's being told to you.
poetry. So moving on to this second aspect of beauty. Wait. Just making sure we're on the same page. We're here right now. I know it might get confusing with all these subgroups. So the second aspect of beauty is this harmonization between the natural world and humanity. The presence of a higher, namely of the spiritual element, is essential to its perfection. The high and divine beauty which can be loved without effeminacy is that which is found in combination with the human will. So it sounds a little confusing, but stick with me. Emerson gives examples of these people throughout history, doing heroic acts within nature. It kinda sounds like how in film, having the characters act with no set doesn't work.
Think of Moby Dick. Like the entire point of the book is to conquer the great whale, is to kill the great whale.
Having a set with no
I know
characters
it's
doesn't
symbolic
work,
of
but
something.
the
I haven't
character
read it, so
actions
I don't
made
know
in
what
the
it is,
set
but
work. It's like in martial arts films, where the set can be used in interesting ways to add to the fight scene. But here's one of Emerson's examples. When Arnold Winkelried, in the High Alps, under the shadow of the avalanche, gathers in his side a sheaf of Austrian spears to break the line for his comrades, are not these heroes entitled to add the beauty of the scene to the beauty of the deed? So moving on to the third aspect of beauty, we have the world as an object of the intellect, to borrow Emerson's phrase. Now full disclosure, this is probably the one aspect I get the least. However, Emerson mentions this totality of nature, and
think of Taoism. Totality of nature is the totality of everything. It's the force capable of destroying creation. It's the circle of life. It's the process of things. It's the order of things. Think of it as something that can be grasped but can't be understood.
I think that's what this section is about. The standard of beauty is the entire circuit of natural forms, the totality of nature. Nothing is quite beautiful alone. Nothing but is beautiful on the whole. A single object is only so beautiful as it suggests this universal grace.
So what he's saying is there must be ugly things to be beautiful things. There must be good to be bad. It's the ups and downs, the ebbs and flows, the push and the pull that give nature its beauty, that give nature its ability to be what it is.
This part is honestly a complicated read, so I'd recommend you guys read it yourself and let me know what you think this third aspect of beauty refers to. But now that we're done with that, we're done with beauty, and we can now move on to language. Now Emerson starts out by writing up what looks like a syllogistic argument but doesn't work like one. 1. Words are signs of natural facts. 2. Particular natural facts are symbols of particular spiritual facts. And 3. Nature is the symbol of spirit. So yeah, when I try to turn this into a logically valid syllogism, it doesn't
It's not. It's not.
really work out. But you still get the gist of what Emerson is saying here nonetheless. There's this spirit, and nature acts as a symbol for that spirit. And then words are used to symbolize.
Think of the Greeks. The Greeks is the easiest way to explain this idea. The Greeks gave the forces of nature human embodiment because it was easier to understand in that way. There was some spirit, there was some control, there was something governing this, and they used archetypal images to portray this idea.
Nature. In this sense, it seems like nature does for spirit what words do for nature. So as to the first premise, I mean it's pretty straightforward and uncontroversial. We use words as a sign for things in the natural world. Do I really need to elaborate on this? Moving on. So premise 2 says that natural facts are symbols of particular spiritual facts.
Words, they seem like such a simple concept, but when you start to break down what they are, it's very complex because what is a word? It's something that conveys meaning. How does it convey meaning? You know what it means because you associate it with an image, you associate it with a form, you associate it with a feeling. And it's through these different feelings and forms that we communicate with each other. But our feelings and forms are all different and unique to ourselves. So this is what leads to a lot of communication breakdown. This is what leads to a lot of differences in opinion.
Facts. This is probably going to be the more complicated premise in this whole thing. And for those secular minded viewers, this is also going to be a hard sell. So let's slowly walk through it. Emerson starts by comparing nature to states of mind. Every appearance in nature corresponds to some state of the mind, and that state of the mind can only be described by
Think of the four elements. The four elements are representative of stages of humans, types of humans, temperaments. It's not just the seasons. This is like an old alchemical idea, old, I don't even know what it is, Freemason or Rosicrucians. Just, I'm gonna just confuse myself, so I'm not even gonna, why is this not?
by presenting that natural appearance as its picture. An enraged man is a lion, a cunning man is a fox, a firm man is a rock, a learned man is a torch. So here,
So like, think of, think of water, like Bruce Lee had the saying, be like water. So we all know what be like water means. Be malleable, be fluid, be adaptable, conform to your container. That's that's the idea here. It's every everything that can be seen in nature can be seen in us as well. The monstrosities, the violence, the beauty, the artistry, the creativeness, it can be seen in us as well. And this is what he's saying. It's like we are not so unique that we possess anything that does not already exist in nature.
Emerson is connecting us to nature, and he further does this later on. He's going to talk about a universal spirit that embodies everything, us and nature. The universal soul he calls reason. It is not mine, or thine, or his, but we are its. We are its property
And think of Taoism or Spinoza's God.
and men, and the blue sky in which the private earth
Something that's in everything but nothing at the same time.
is buried, the sky with its eternal
It's very
calm and full of
paradoxical, but
everlasting
it's
orbs is this type of reason. That which intellectually considered we call reason, considered in relation to nature we call spirit. Spirit is the creator. Spirit hath life in itself, and man in all ages and countries embody it in his language as the Father. So for me, I'm getting Spinoza vibes or even Taoist vibes from this.
yeah, that's what I was gonna say. This very similar to like any sort of monad, very similar to I mean even I wish I read Gita because I'd be able to tell you exactly what he's talking about, but I just haven't.
Obviously not exactly the same, but similar. So returning to the proposition, if we're all interconnected through the spirit, then nature tells us something about that spirit. This is said in the next premise, but Emerson mentions how nature has at times been used to tell these parables of moral truths, such as a rolling stone gathers no moss. Perhaps this is a more concrete example as to how natural facts are symbols for spiritual facts. Let me know what you think. As for the third premise, it's obviously pretty similar to the second, so I'll let you guys read into it if you want all.
Yeah, so these are very poetic ideas, but again, the more you can into these things, the more you can start to see yourself in everything. And when you see yourself in everything, that's really the ability to get over yourself. That's really the ability to transcend your ego. And if you know anything about any mystery school, if you know anything about any great philosophy or any great belief system for change, when you can overcome your own ego, when you can overcome your own programming, your own experiences, your own memories and things that keep you stuck, then you can become who it is that you need to be.
All the juicy details. But I will mention this one important quote that seems to tie the language section up pretty nicely. There seems to be a necessity in spirit to manifest itself in material forms, and days and nights, river and storm, beast and bird, acid and alkali, pre-exist in necessary ideas in the mind of God, and are what they are by virtue of preceding affections in the world of spirit. A fact is the end of last issue of Spirit. And finally, we have the last use of nature, discipline. Now don't think of discipline as the discipline you learn when taking a martial arts class.
Perfect.
Think discipline as in the discipline of psychology, like a field of study. Nature is a discipline of the understanding in intellectual truths. Our dealing with sensible objects is a constant exercise in the necessary lessons of difference, of likeness, of order, of being and seeming.
You can learn everything you need through nature. The more you spend time with nature, the more you spend time with happiness. I mean, we can point to a million things that to prove this. We can point to a million examples. I mean, Roy Jones Jr., one of the greatest boxers ever, literally said he learned all of his boxing skills from watching the roosters fight each other. It's like there's some knowledge, there's some understanding, there's something that exists in nature that's beyond whatever it is that we could recreate. And when we merely start listening to the things around us, when we merely start looking to these things for inspiration, then we find everything we need.
of progressive arrangements of ascent from particular to general, of combination to one end of manifold forces. Now, this video is long enough, and I don't want to waste your precious time going in depth as to how nature can teach us stuff. I mean, it's pretty straightforward. Emerson highlights differences as an example, like determining separation and gradation. There are tons of examples like this, and you know what? How about you guys do the work here? Comment below some insights that you've gained from nature. And with that, we are not done with the nature essay. You see, this is kind of a big one, so I'll probably have to cut it up into two parts.
So we can go back to the four elements again. What is it? Earth, wind, fire, and air. You know, Avatar: The Last Airbender. But what does it mean to be fire? It means to have passion. What does it mean to be water? It means to be malleable. What does it mean to be a rock? It means to be sturdy. What does it mean to be air? It means to be open. It means to be free. And when you can look at the aspects of your personality that you struggle with and begin to embrace these elements of nature into your own personality and ebb and flow with them and allow them to exist in you at the proper time, then you can be a whole individual. That's really that. But with that said, I'm exhausted. We went through two videos today. Wow. But yeah, I'm gonna leave you guys with that. Thank you guys so much for an awesome stream. Peace out. I'll catch you in the next one. I have a video on Kafka that's coming out tomorrow. I know you guys are gonna like that, so stay tuned for that. Peace out.